everybody. Good evening, and thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Syncretism with Santos Bonacci here on American Freedom Radio. And my name is David Whitehead, and I will be standing in for Santos tonight as well as the rest of the shows for this month. While he's away very busy working on his upcoming documentary film. He's currently away in Ecuador, for those that don't know. And I must say I'm very, very excited for tonight's show. I have Michael Tsarion with me tonight on the line, and I just must say that Michael has been a very positive influence in my journey going through this process of, this journey of discovery and awakening that everybody listening to the show is no doubt on. And his work has impacted me greatly, and it's just an absolute honor and a privilege to be able to speak with Michael. And so I just want to go ahead and bring Michael here on the show. So, Michael, thanks for taking this time with us tonight, and welcome.
Thanks, David. It's nice to be on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, Michael, before we get into tonight's discussion, I want to let everybody know about the upcoming event that you have at the end of this month. For those that aren't aware, Michael's been doing the MSR Conspiratorium, which is just a fantastic event. We've done 2 already, and it's a very interactive event, which makes it very, very unique. And we have one coming up on Wednesday, May 29th at 7 p.m. And it's basically just it's a live webcast, so everybody can check it out live. He'll be answering questions, and we'll be discussing and exchanging ideas on various topics that are brought up in Michael's MSR Conspiratorium page on Facebook. So if you're not currently a member there or checking that out, definitely go to Facebook. You just have to look for MSAR, and that's MTSAR Conspiratorium. You just have to like the page, and you can post your questions, your comments. And what we do is we just bring in, the best questions to the event, and then we have a sort of a roundtable discussion about it, get Michael's thoughts, and it's very interactive. So we're very, very excited about that. And Michael, did you have anything that you wanted to add about the particular format of the Conspiratorium?
No, just again, thank everybody for being part of this. It's based on a very unique idea, which is that the audience knows as much as the so-called teachers in this movement today. There was some great progress has been made, but my idea was to turn it around and have that participation from the audience in a very direct way, involving the latest video and webcast systems. It is working, and so people should, feel free. The heads are full of questions right now, not only about the past, where we've been, where we are right now, and in the future. So everyone is welcome to join it, using this latest technology for a good purpose, as opposed to just be trolling and chatting meaninglessly on the internet. This is what it's all about, to make real progress in the world. So thanks to everybody who's participated. Thanks to you, David, and also Chris, for putting it on, and for everyone to come by there and post their comments, and we'll get to all those questions, as many as we can, certainly. So everybody's welcome.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up Chris. It is a team effort. And, Chris, I know you're tuning in. And thanks for doing the work that you do on the page and putting these events together. And both Chris and myself are honored, Michael, to be working with you on this, just to get this information out to people. And maybe we can get into the topics that we want to discuss tonight, because I think it's very important right now. I feel that a lot of people that I'm speaking to are starting to ask the deeper questions, and they're starting to really wonder after, maybe they've been researching this for some time. And I mean, you've been in this field for years, and you've been seeing a lot of different people come and go. You've seen a lot of movements that have turned into faux oppositions and things like that. And I think people are getting a sense of wondering where the direction is moving forward, and what is the direction of the alternative research community as we move forward. So I wonder if we could maybe start there and get your take on that.
Well, definitely, that's a great question, and I know we plan to divide this into sort of 3 loose sections, nothing heavy, but it is good to let the first part we can just sort of review where we've come from, leading up to 2012, where we kind of are now, and then maybe some ideas about solutions for the future, that kind of scheme. And also just want to mention in passing that when people listen through to this, we will have links below to my forum, particularly, where a lot of these solutions have been posted and have been there for many years, particularly the War on You thread, the post-humanism thread, the recommended teachers, and the recommended ideas. And all these 4 links and others will be posted right there, so the listeners can immediately click on those and go, because I have links there. They're age-old, they work, they're important. So just in passing, without going in, mentioning these throughout the interview, just let people know, let listeners know that they're there. But you're absolutely right, and there has been progress made. So if we were to start our interview by just talking about the past, since, say, even 9/11, which is a good date, I think, because that's when masses of people, this is when masses of people understood that there was some sort of conspiracy at work, as opposed to just people who had been on the fringes, being in the conspiracy subject. So if you just take September 11th, 2001 as a date, that's an important date. So if we take that and move up to the famous so-called end date of 2012, and we'll get to that specifically in a minute. I want to talk about that because a lot of people held some major fallacies about what 2012 meant, and that needs to be addressed now before we move on. But in that period that we're talking about, 10 or so years, there has been progress. You just mentioned it. People are asking the deeper questions. You had to have a lot of nonsense in the way. You had to have a lot of wrangling and debates and resistance, of course. But I think that the voices in this movement, the David Icks, the Alex Joneses, people like myself, we've won out. Our arguments are very strong. Refuters, though they have come up, have not won a single point. My forum is loaded. The forum itself is a testament to this success because it is loaded with confirmations and proofs that I've received from around the world for many years now, saying, Michael, your theory in your Atlantis book is proven, here you are. And I post them on the forum sequentially, chronologically. And that forum is just chock-a-block full of confirmations of ideas that I've held, for over 3 decades, but then presented to the world more recently, right? Say it's in the Irish Origins book, say it's something else, say it's in Atlantis, whatever, or on other miscellaneous subjects. Confirmation. And that's just me. I'm not talking about all the other thinkers and scholars and, the Lloyd Pyes and the Graham Hancocks. All of these people have done superlative research. The wonderful work of people like Anthony Peake. Absolutely for our time. And you can, Ralph Ellis, my colleague, take one of these people. Just take one. You may dislike others. Just take one of these people. Review the magnitude of their work, the superlativeness of their work, let alone all the people who've worked within constitutional law to unravel that, of which there's been many names, and biodiversity and other fields, you see. Once you take all of these people's work, they can clearly see that something in our age, something even within this 10-year period, has been happening that's remarkable. I think that all that needs to be added to that is that, and again, coming from my slant on it, my platform, is that let's not leave consciousness at the door. I think a good many people are still doing that, but then there's a good group of people who've realized, by listening to me, that you really can't do that, that it's not just about fighting evil on the hill, or in the corridors of power. It's right there in front of you. You have to deal with your own sort of psychological makeup. That requires an incredible commitment, a kind of holy work that I've mentioned before, shadow work and so on. We also know that we're handicapped. Again, through my work, people know we are handicapped generationally because of inherited trauma. And that has sort of created us to be more animistic, more infantile than we really should be. And that we're in the early stages of healing. So we should give ourselves a pat on the back for having come so far. Yeah, we made a lot of mistakes. Yeah, we're in the early stages of a healing process. The psyche was fragmented. This whole idea of inherited trauma has been central to my work. And I've pushed it very hard since I wrote the Atlantis book. And I think a lot of people are getting their minds around that. We also know what the big banes are. Federal government, obviously. But even things like collectivism, things people would not have first thought about. What is this concept of oneness? Now, as I say, most people still haven't got their heads around a lot of this, but some do. And they're the ones who matter, because they're going to study these things and really realize that there are some of the evils of the world are not quite what we'd think. We also understood perhaps that transgression isn't necessarily progression. I've brought this out in works so many times, that just because you're a rebel against the system, a rebel with a cause or a rebel without a cause, doesn't necessarily mean that you're proactively doing something to make change. You're just the flip side of the coin of oppression and authoritarianism, you see. And people are getting their heads around this. That just because I disagree and wear a peace logo and matted hair and a tie-dye, doesn't mean I'm really making any progress. Progress is really something different. It's based on intelligence, it's based on reason, and it's based on a little bit different dynamic. And I think we've made some progress there as well. And I think one of the most important, outstanding pieces of knowledge that I hope people are starting to get is not to be overwhelmed by the so-called problems that exist. This is very important. Otherwise, the progress we would make would be slowed down, right? Wouldn't it? So let's realize that we don't have to invent the wheel. No matter how gruesome, no matter how malignant the problems appear, politically, economically, they're actually extremely simple to fix. And I really mean that. I call it not inventing the wheel. The knowledge of our forefathers, the knowledge of people you've never heard about, because the people who are screaming democracy and globalism don't want you to know about some of the great people that I mentioned on my forum and throughout my work. There's been an avid campaign to knock their books. I mean, this was predicted by people like Alan Bloom back in the 50s, the closing of the American mind, John Taylor Gatto, the dumbing down. All these people who speak about the monstrous behavior in the universities and colleges of America know what I'm talking about. And these are the top brass. There's many other names I could mention, pundits who've written stern books warning America about the downsizing of intelligence, the leaving out of the William Shakespeares and the Platos and the Aristotles, you see, and the Nietzsches. These are no longer being taught. Yeah, because there's so many, those names and many others, the Oswald Spanglers, the Otto von Bismarcks, the Otto Weiningers, the Julius Evolas. And I'm not wearing the T-shirt, a lot of these people. It's like people used to blame me on the Blavatsky thing. Hey, I'm not a theosophist, but I can certainly admire that woman for, some of the amazing things that she's said and done. I can do that without having to buy into the whole. That's the sign of an intelligent man who can go to all sorts of areas and without, wearing the T-shirt can easily, because that man is seeking truth. Well, it's the same with a lot of the other names that I mentioned. I'm not 100% into what they're talking about. I got differences. I don't buy into everything Nietzsche said. I don't buy into everything that Hegel said. I don't buy into everything, that Ayn Rand said. But my God, what has that got to do with the body of their work that can help and assist in remedy the terrible state of decay that's in this world? But back to the main point is that we don't have to invent the wheel. There are names, brilliant names, and we have not heard about their work. Or once upon a time America did, but now, things have changed utterly. And so that we're not being told about the banes of collectivism, the banes of big government, the banes of endless immigration, or the bane of America wondering what every other country is doing, involving itself in these United Nations programs and Bretton Woods agreements. You see, we're no longer being told by very clever people what the dangers are.
Yeah,
and I think also...
Oh, sorry to cut you off, Michael. I was just wanted to add there quickly that it seems that a lot of people that are still looking at this, maybe they don't have that historical context to go back, and for some reason it seems like, especially when you look at what's going on in America, and even like I live here in Canada, and it's happening more here as well, where we've forgotten how these types of systems have been able to eventually take over control. And you point out in a very eloquent way how it has to do with the fact that we have actually given up the power in our own lives and given it over to these dictators that have gladly taken it on board to do it their way. And it just seems like you're right. There's not nobody's out there, or very few people are out there actually saying, look, we can learn from what's happened in the past. It's not like we just started fighting this force, in today's age, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we come from a culture of the 80s, of the yuppies and the guppies, and people who demonstrably and willfully rolled back the past. We have the generation gap of the 90s and the 2000s, where there's a willful disregard of grandfathers, elders, and of real statesmen. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about politicians, but I'm talking about statesmen. I'm talking about grandfatherly figures in your own personal life and grandmothers who could have taught us very, very important things about history. And as we'll talk about later on, even the very concepts of democracy that we have, even a three-party governmental system, even the word civilization, even the use of that term only dates from a couple of hundred years ago. The study of history as we know it, I brought this out in the Irish Origins work. The very study of history as we know it, which is nothing more than man reporting on his own progress, in a very anthrocentric way, even that is 100 years old. Barely 100 years ago, people were not even writing histories in the way that, is become very common today. So, no sooner did we have all these modalities, no sooner did we have these universities functioning, and sort of a higher educated middle class, then the powers that be, and we know who they are, the federal government and the powers behind them, both royalist and religious, saw that as a major threat in America and started to scale it back, bring in all this parchment idolatry, screaming about constitutional monarchies and democracies and freedom and justice and liberty, and all these lies. Anyone who's done 5 minutes homework knows it's not true. And then, moving forward to the present day, you have people like myself picking up on some of the great works of the past to remind people, why is it that collectivism is a bad thing? Why is it that consciousness cannot be left out? And also showing, I hope I've demonstrated, and in fact I know that I've done it in the last post-humanism talk, I left no stone unturned to show that people don't really want to be self-aware. Blaming Big Brother and blaming these oligarchical forces, these worms, you can't do that. That is just fungus that grew on the garden that you let neglected, the garden of the self. Yeah. So why would somebody want to do that? Why would somebody want to neglect their own selfhood and then allow tyrants to come in and show you how to walk? Big Brother takes over every aspect of your life. In ancient Ireland, the British used to impose a window tax. You were taxed on the sizes of your window because of how much air you could breathe. This is the kind of psychopaths we're talking about. Get me. I am not joking. I am not making this up. You were taxed on the sticks that you picked up to light a fire, and you were taxed on the sizes of your windows. And people go down and go, look at them lovely cottages. Lovely, lovely cottage. Look at them wee tiny windows. Isn't it just marvelously cute? No. The reason why that door is so small you can't get in it, and the reason why the window is the way it is because they were taxed on the air. That's the world you're living in. Welcome to royalty. And this whole concept of, if you keep on blaming the masters, you forget that the relative powerlessness, right? To be self-aware, you see, it brings with it thorns. It's difficult work. You've not only got to realize that there's external tyrants working to, keep you in your place.
Sorry to cut you off there, Michael. That's the break. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're here with Michael Tsarion on American Freedom Radio. We'll be back in a few short minutes, so stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. You're listening to American Freedom Radio. This is Syncretism with Santos Bonacci. And my name is David Whitehead, and I'm standing in tonight. And tonight's guest is the one and only Michael Tsarion, and we're very pleased to have him on tonight. We were just getting into a very important discussion there. We're talking about the present role, or the role that we need to be looking at for the alternative research community, and the direction we should be focusing our energy and our attention on. And Michael was making a brilliant point before we got cut off by the break, something that I feel is very important as well, which is that we end up pointing fingers all the time at these different control systems that are at work, and we do need to be aware of the forces of evil in the world, but every time we point the finger, we realize that, it's important to realize that there's three fingers pointing right back at you, and that we have to do that inner work and realize that we need to get rid of those, tyrants within. So, Michael, I was wondering if you could continue that line of discussion there that we got cut off with.
Yeah, well, I think we were talking about what we may have learned in the age of awakening, so to speak, up until 2012, and you put it correctly that there has been progress. We know that what's the point of getting into the argy-bargy? What's the point of working in a political pigsty, which has already been orchestrated and created for us, namely the creation of pseudo-movements that we might want to join, think desperately wanting change, but only then to have agent provocateurs turn up within those movements, or to find out, as the Black Panthers and other people did, in ages gone by, so to speak, other movements, other people have realized that when they've created what they thought were movements that had some power and clout, that they were compromised from within, or even owned outright from the beginning. So we should have learned, because if we haven't learned that point, there really won't be any progress at all. This is why it's so serious. And then going back to what you said, yes, the consciousness aspect, that we know that people find a measure of happiness. I mean, lower of all people find a happiness, an actual subconscious feeling of contentment by immersing themselves in a mob. But unfortunately, that mob can even be a church, a religion, a New Age group, you see. So individualism, which used to be the mainstay of all the intellectuals, it used to be what it was all about, that's been decreasing. And we have to watch out for the contaminatory forces that weaken individualism, be it a parent, be it an elder, be it an ideology, or be it some other allegiance or business affiliation. In fact, you don't have to look for them. It's there. It comes with the territory. It's like rust. It's ubiquitously there. They're working away to eat away, to corrode a man and a woman's sense of identity. So all the talk about civilization, and as I said, that word has only been used for about 100 or 200 years. All the talk about individualism, freedom, and liberty is mostly just, window dressing. It's just rhetoric. We have the words right now, but we don't have the real thing, because our world is wall to wall, full of contributing factors, and my work is merely to help people shine light on that. Don't just keep looking at the news headlines to wonder about, Obama and big government and Illuminatis. There's tyranny of other kinds happening all around you. The erosion of your selfhood. I try to put people onto the thinkers, who've unpacked this more than I ever could in one lifetime, in the work that I've recommended for people. But always to mention that what can you do to break that? If you want to dissolve and cut through the Gordian knot of world tyranny, you're going to have to understand where the roots of tyranny lie. And the roots of tyranny lie in the self, in a self of a person who hates himself, who prefers to merge into a big omelet of everybodyness and oneness under these spiritual terms I'm talking about, using talismanic terms to cover up what they're doing. Because being an individual turns out to be a painful experience. It's tough emotionally and mentally. You've got to stay on the ball. You've got to work out just like you do in judo or martial arts or, being a warrior. You've got to work it out. You've got to get out there and pump iron, and it's hard. Psychologically speaking, you see. So it's much easier to repress aspects of oneself and then walk out into society as a quarter of a being or a third of a human being with no boundaries at all. If you're not operating, I hope that the biggest contributing factor of my work for people is the fact that if you're not operating as an imperial self, as a total person, then you have no chance of fighting world tyranny. If you're only operating as a pseudo-self, a counterfeit being, then my goodness, what kind of, boxing gloves do you have on to fight tyrants who benefit from your very lack of insight? And then on a more darker note, although we talked about what might have positively been learned, on a more darker note, we realized that 2012, as in my work, I don't see a lot of other people having mentioned this, but I certainly mentioned that 2012 can be the sort of milestone that signals the end of human 1.0. And I've made this a very strong theme in my work, and just to remind listeners, those who've not followed my work too closely, that that's the darkness aspect, that one whole cycle, one whole mode of civilization, like I said in the posthumanism talk, the jettisoning of ideas, of ways of seeing, of ways of thinking, happening so slowly we don't even realize it. Are the youth who walking around today glued to their iPhones, are these people, as human as their forefathers? Are they concerned about history? Have they got a sense of where they've come from? Are they rooted in any kind of race, religion, tradition? No, they're not. Are they even thinking? No, they can't even bear the gap between two thoughts. Most of them don't even know how to finish a sentence, let alone dwell deeply on a matter. There's no criticism. Criticism, the liberals, the disingenuous liberals, and all these other forces that are around us have wiped out judgmentalism, criticism. You can't say anything against anyone. You'll be under arrest or fined. It's become a completely Orwellian situation. As Frank Zappa said, this is not a noble, delicate, or sublime country. This is a mess run by criminals. And my whole point is that we put those criminals there to rule us because it's better sometimes to fall asleep. But that sleep has now reached a critical mass, right, where man exists, but he's not a being. He's not a human being. What does being mean? Right? It's the beginning of the post-human era and all that entails. Maybe it entails some of the things we've already been warned about by machines and supercomputers and all, but it may take on another. What about Frank Herbert's Dune? Do you think this man was talking nonsense? He just wrote a couple of books because he didn't have anything else to do? When this man talks about a hallucinogenic that is so powerful that no one can resist taking it, and I mean no one, and by those who do take it, Matrix, that looks like child's play.
Yeah.
So what this man was potentially talking about could be a disastrous future for mankind, where they're no longer human in another way, because you've opened the doors of perception in a negative way. You've blasted the universe open through some massive hallucinogenic. And believe me, there's streams of people going off right now and doing lower versions of this, thinking that that's the way, the back door to God. They don't know what they're messing with. Tomorrow when Big Brother, and I believe they even have these substances, I believe there could be even another, just like LSD was distributed, and the troops have been distributed all sorts of amazing psychotropic drugs. I mean, these movies like Jacob's Ladder and others expose this. The Orwellian concept certainly involves the use of psychological means to dumb down people. We know that. We've read that. The listeners know as much as I do about that, maybe even more. So who's to say that one of the scenarios of the 2012, now that we move from the past up to where we are right now, we have to bear in mind, I've made it clear in Architects of Control and other works, that people are lining up for the happy drug. But I'm very happy. I'm not troubled by emotion anymore, Michael. I used to be really depressed, but I don't want to be looking at myself. I don't want to ask what's the roots of my depression. I don't want to face any of that stuff. I want to sleep at night and be charming and happy and greet my friends with this Prozac smile. So, yeah, it's taken away all my selfhood. I don't even need to look at anything. We're already a heartbeat away. Man is already 3 meals away from revolution and mental and physical, breakdown. Did you know that even in 1950, half the medical beds were for mental patients? And the record of mental disturbance, mental pathology has been escalating since the 1950s at a phenomenal rate, with women, showing more signs of mental disease than men. But it's been increasing. It's even in immigrant populations that as soon as they reach the Western shores with the Western pressures, when they were living in shacks, they were okay. They were, sort of no mental disease to speak of. The moment they come to our world, they can't hack it. So the disease, the mental disturbance and the sense of depression and suicide escalates with any immigrant population.
Yeah.
So we have a serious problem here. And I was just taking a sip of tea there, but I can finish on the darker side by saying that, look, there is actually a danger. And it's more deep than we can ever, talk about in one show. But it's basically what I call the Frank Herbert syndrome. The man beautifully, and book after book after book, his fans will know what I'm talking about. And he wasn't messing about. He was talking about mind-altering substances that have the power to do unimaginable things with human consciousness, and it changes the structure of everything. Everything that you can, from your concept of your own sense of gender. We're talking about how heroin makes you feel like a god and all these. Look, this is nothing compared to what you're going to think you are, and what society will become. And Frank Herbert paints a picture of what happens with the discohesion, and then suddenly there's a coming together of these priestly and priestess cults in order to, monopolize on the spice trade, meaning the drug trade, and how society completely has to reconfigure itself. People are able to time travel. People are able to talk to the bloody gods. People are, able to be as debauched as they possibly can. And see, this is a situation in which if you don't take it, you're going to be like some complete outsider, like you see in the British series, The Tripods, the so-called outsiders who just have to, if you sign off, or like you see in these movies like Free Jack, if you sign off and say, no, I'm not going to face the crystal, I'm not going to take any of this. Well, how are you going to exist? Everybody's floating around, high as kites in a way that you can't even imagine. The whole of society has crumbled. You're in some sort of Blade Runner existence, right? And the poor little bugger who tried to hang on to what he thought was his humanness, he'd be lucky if he gets to serve noodles. He is going to be, what are you going to do in a situation like that? So in the end, you'll be forced to take it, just to join in. Because what the masses do, the power of the masses, people say, oh, Michael, you keep on talking about the collective, I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, you're going to know about the power of the masses and the vortex of it. Maybe if you don't see it today, who's to say you won't see it tomorrow? When the collective says, we're drinking Coke, you don't drink Pepsi, or we're going to kill you, we're taking this drug and you're not going to take it, yeah, you'll know about the power of collectivism then, when it's the true Orwellian version. But as I said, with this drug, you see, there's no question of guns to the head. There are no wars. There is no... The whole of life changes. The whole of life changes for the scientist as much as it does for the dole bum. All right? It's a complete and utter worldwide global meltdown. The whole planet gets high, so to speak. What would you do in a situation like that? You think they're going to care about Michelangelo and Shakespeare? The books will be burned as easily. The wisdom of ages, the sacrifices of forefathers are going to be as much trashed as it would be in any other mass invasion, you see. But this time it's a mass invasion coming from within, from a people who cannot face themselves, who don't want to look at their self-sadism, who don't want to look at their dark side, right? Today they're taking Prozac, tomorrow they could be taking something else. And as I said, a lot more could be said about this, but we obviously don't have the time. We're just trying to give an overview about where we've come, and the kind of socio-political state we're in. Some is very positive. I see that in the alternative movement being very positive. But in the world in general, bad. We could be literally at the edge of the world in regards to this post-human agenda, you see. And this is, people should never forget this as they strive to create change. Never leave consciousness at the door. You may make all these remedies, you may make all these fixes, you may make some progress, socially, but if you're not changing man fundamentally, like Frank Zappa's and other great sages have said, changing man as he is within himself, it may all come to naught.
Well, exactly, and we see that, everything you're talking about there, we see so many examples of this in our modern society now, and thinking back from even just from 9/11 till now, the level that we have more fluoride in the water, more chemicals in the food. We have all of this stuff with Monsanto, having this genetically modified food, and now they've got this 00 status from the government in America, where they can, some countries are banning them, but other countries are allowing it to happen, and on. And then the movies are now 3D IMAX, surround sound. It's like a total, dip your head in this, and the movies are just getting creepier and weirder, and it's mind-blowing. So there's so many different angles of this attack, and you do see it. I just know it from interacting with people in my everyday life, where you have this consensus opinion from everybody, whether it's about how you should be taking care of your body, you should be listening to the doctor, or what kind of music you should be listening to, what kind of clothes you should be wearing. So we're already seeing this very collectivized mindset, and it's not things that are definitely good. We were seeing these are actually people, and a lot of people, believing into things that are toxic for their mind, their body, and their spirit, So what do you think, Michael, would be, we've seen some progress in the alternative community, but what do you think the biggest solution is going to have to be to really start reaching people on a bigger level with this?
Well, the answer to that is massive, and it means that the civilization as we know it has to be rebuilt again from the ground up. We don't have to invent too many new wheels, because we've done well in technology, we've done well in some of the tools, but the ideology, and then as my work insists, the constant denuding of the lie, these talismanic terms like democracy and all of this, people have to start waking up. It hasn't worked. How do you tell it hasn't worked, though? How do you, I've tried to present work to the world to show that the democratic models that we have, they're not working. Giving everybody the vote, it maybe isn't a great idea. Right now, people resist statements like that, you see. But down the line, as we move towards the future, as we understand that neither intelligent nor good men rule, and never have. It's always been intelligent and evil men, immoral men, and so on. As we start to get to grips with some of the fundamentals, there can be change. But it means that we have to completely deconstruct many of the models of socio-political organization that we have at this point in time. And we can get into that more after the break.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, there's the music, folks, so please don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes. We're here with Michael Tsarion, and we'll be back after these messages. And hey there, everybody, we're back. You're listening to American Freedom Radio. My name is David Whitehead. I'm standing in for Santos Bonacci, and tonight's guest is Michael Tsarion, and we're just discussing the current situation that we're in, and the different oppositions that have tried to been put up against these powers that be in the world. And we've just been looking into the fact that they've been very successful throughout history of co-opting these movements and trying to lead humanity back into their chains and back into their servitude to the system that they see as the best way to go, because it works obviously for them and not for you. But here we are trying to look at some different solutions and some different ideas to how we can move forward and how we can present this information now at a deeper level, because we do see that people are asking the deeper questions. Some people are still, completely unaware. Others are just coming in, and others that have been awake for a long time are really trying to expand their knowledge and their awareness. So Michael, we were just talking a bit about. Actually, one of the things you were bringing up reminded me that recently I just watched that movie Equilibrium. I'm not sure if you've seen that one with Christian Bale.
Many times.
Yeah, where they paint that picture of the future and you were talking about the drug and the whole idea where it's this collectivized hive mind. And I just thought of that film where the idea is that you're taking this drug to actually desensitize your humanity. And the whole point of that film was to get rid of the art and get rid of the great works that were there to be as an inspiration for people to advance their consciousness and their creativity. And we see, that slowly coming into play. And there's many ways that we see that coming in. And I don't know, it popped into my head, and I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah, and there's Stanley Kubrick, Francis Ford Coppola. There's been a lot of books a lot of, the Blade Runner syndrome. I look at it that way. I don't take these frivolously. I don't take them as just entertainment. I think there's a lot, and we're being slowly groomed. The intense. You talked about the IMAX fiasco, and if you look into the figures of how many people, even in a recession, head down and spend colossal gazillions of money just to go to the cinema, you'd be surprised at the money that these cinemas make. Then the video games of the kids sitting at home. I'm not against these technologies, but I think the immersion in it is worrisome, you see. Because these are also, let's never forget, the occult societies who know more about, they know about the stuff we're discussing right here. What we're discussing here should breed optimism, because we're actually talking as the controllers speak. They know about our psyche. They know about our libido. They know about our hang-ups. And so the things that they've designed, be it religion, false medicine, the socio-political systems, the organization, that structure, all that democracy, all rubbish, all of these things that they've plugged in so that we can get involved with, it's by design. They've created the fit. So today, they knew that if religion doesn't do it, right, as man becomes more rational, the Catholic Church realized that nobody's going to be buying into this mysterium stuff. So, yeah, but can't we get them to identify with a team? Did you know that it was religion? It was the church that was behind all team sports. The first team sport was cycling, the one that got any kind of publicity and press, and then it moved from there to car racing and everything else. But the biggest influence of the church was in soccer and in rugby and in those games that we associate with schools. But it was actually the church that pushed it. And it was done before the First and Second World War, to give man the team spirit he'd need in the trenches when he's been sent to sacrifice himself. There's a direct connection here, by the way. It's been acknowledged by top historians. And the whole idea of getting one's libido out in this team collectivized movement was orchestrated and pushed by church, because church is all about conformity. Even when you come and sit in the church, the very way that you sit, the very humble, I'm a sinner, I'm in this dark, eerie world which I can't make any sense of, and I'm probably here because I'm being punished or whatever, right? So you have this syndrome of this trembling, frightened, deeply hateful Christian, because he hates the Jews and he hates the Muslims and he hates everybody else and he hates the atheists, right? And then you got the Jews sitting there cowering in their synagogue, hating everybody else, and the Muslims ready to slice your mother, women, your wife and children to pieces. We're into democracy, right? Last year, London, the immigrants outweighed the national population for the first time in history. Do you think these people are going to give a monkeys about your democracy if they ever get their way and take over your land? What a luxury! What a luxury we've been having, sitting there with our George Washington, pictures on the wall. What a joke! Just you wait till some of these wonderful people you've been entertaining and slashing your own wrists to make them feel at home and welcome, cutting your own arteries. These people themselves will finish you off. The ludicrousness of the religious type. They've entered the world, right? The average religious person, he's not connected to nature. He's not learning from nature. He hates nature. He's thinking he's down here in this fallen world populated by devils, and he's probably down here as a sinner, and he just can't wait to get out of it and get back to sitting at the right hand of God. And then you get the scientism on the other side of the scientist, materialist, atheist, empty soul who doesn't believe that anything is animated by spirit. You're just down here in a world of mechanical rocks and mechanical, dead things, and man's job is as a survival of the fittest, manipulate nature, suppress nature. Nature's a resource. The animals can be butchered. The seas can be polluted. The skies can be polluted. It's just dead nature that you've got to learn how to suppress. There's nothing spiritual about it. Just get in there and realize it's all dead matter that you'd better be conquering, and you stand outside of it. Right? So religion and the atheists, the materialists, the scientists, the scientism, and the religiousism, the theism, has exactly the same roots of man being separate from the universe in which he inhabits. The rational mind, the scientific mind, standing there studying this alien thing. And in terms of religious people, the same thing. God in his heaven and, the extended world of evil matter, I better watch. All transgression, all temptation, can't be doing anything natural, including my relationship with my body, utterly malignant. And then this is a feedback loop, because the more you project that kind of thinking into nature, nature has a strange way of making the malignancy come back to you in the diseases and the dysfunction and all the kind of malignancy we see. To add to the points you made about the aberrations, two more. One is the rising of the old diseases again, because the drugs that have been giving people, pumping into them, is now making lowering the immune system, and the very old malarias and E. coli's and all sorts of other major diseases are on their way back and are skyrocketing in hospitals. Then the employing of all these immigrants in the hospitals, right? They're extremely unhygienic. They don't even know what you're talking about. They don't wash their hands, so to speak. They're working in the kitchens, so they've this is not me saying this. This is facts. You can go on Wikipedia, go anywhere and discover this. That the skyrocketing escalate in diseases coming out of the hospitals. This is and also in the meat, right? In ordinary domestic shopping centers, when you go to buy the meat, they've discovered that almost 50% of the meat, even more, is contaminated. This is official reports from official bodies. They're saying that some of the most of the meat right across the board now is so contaminated that that's going to bring people's health down low. So I talked about a super drug on a more of a psychogenic, psychological, psychotropic level. But there's also another counterpoint to this, which is the state of decay physically, right? The people's immune systems being purposely lowered because there's so many drugs that they're pumping into themselves, and that the government insists on vaccinating you, weakening the spirit, and when weakening the body, I must say, when the body is weakened, then of course everything else goes with it. Or let's say that your attention is now. But just as I said before, when the Catholic Church started to realize that their power was slipping, they said, man will identify with a team, won't he? We don't need him to identify with our bogus pantheon of ludicrous pagan gods. Give him a team. Give him a company and a corporation. Give him a political purpose. Give him neocons, conservatisms, liberals, social democrats. He'll identify, he'll wave that flag. Give him communism. Let's sit back and give him all these isms and watch him work. He doesn't need our God. He can still have that if he wants. But these Jesuits are not stupid people. They're very clever. They said, give man endless amount of other things. Every clique, every faction that he could possibly want. Factions within factions, cliques within cliques. He'll join. He'll give his lifeblood for that. He'll turn up 80,000 people to watch a football game, but he couldn't turn up 5 people. One of the great constitutional groups of America, one of the great constitutional groups had to stop one of their yearly meets because not enough people showed up. One of the most important constitutional groups whose work is so fundamental. I've mentioned them on my forum. Okay, these are people who are tutoring the whole of American society how to get out of this constitutional Bill of Rights nightmare and get back to some proper, rules and regulations and systems of government that are so much more benign. We can talk about libertarianism in a minute. But this is these sort of libertarian groups that are wonderful. Nobody votes for them. These people shoot down any concept of the kind of, three-party system we've got. Offer wonderful things in an instant. You're free of federal government. You're free of federal control, right? You're free of any big government control. All of these things come immediately and instantly with the libertarian pattern. And yet nobody votes for it. They can't even get people to turn up. So, but 80,000 people would turn up to watch some game.
Yeah.
So the church knew this. This is all coming out of the church. And the church for thousands of years, even before our modern times, you see, what we're dealing with is all these things that have come down to us, all the institutions that our forefathers stupidly bought into, are born out of a malignant patriarchy. You don't need to be against patriarchy any more than you're against matriarchy. But there's malignant versions of that. The Judaism that we have, the Islamism we have, this whole Grecian model of the Constantines, and then the versions of Christianity that we've got are extremely aggressive. Deeply anti-natural. In other words, malignant patriarchal model. These are some of the things that need to be deconstructed. But they need to be deconstructed intelligently, not just by a bunch of New Agers who have nothing else to offer you.
Oh, absolutely, Michael. And we're here at the top of the hour. First hour goes pretty quick. But folks, don't go anywhere. We're going to be back after these few short minutes for the second hour with Michael Tsarion. So stay put, and we'll be back in a few minutes. And welcome back, everybody. Here on American Radio, Syncretism with Santos Bonacci, and my name is David Whitehead. We are here with Michael Tsarion, and we're heading into the second hour. And Michael, I wanted to maybe start off with, or let's just continue what we were talking about, but let's go into how you see some possible futures going. I mean, because we seem to be having, maybe a few different timelines here where We've kind of been recapping since 9/11 and all of these different things that we're seeing increasing in this architecture of control increasing. Could it be an act of defense because they see that there is opposition coming? They do see that there is consciousness coming and people waking up and finding out how these things really work and trying to look for solutions. Is that why they're picking up the pace here? And what do you think that their strategy will be moving forward? And then maybe we can get into what our strategy should be.
Well, this is exactly where we find ourselves today. These people are intelligent in a malignant way. Are sociopaths, psychopaths. They do as much damage as any local psychopath would do by coming into your life or your business to stir up trouble. They do it on a global level. As Frank Zappa's quote said, we're being led by monsters and criminals. They are into order. They have a lot to fear. They've had a lot to fear for a very long time, and certainly since the turn of the modern age, when people are more literate, yes, they have a lot to fear. So the whole of the way that they're organizing society, and the fact that they still want us to be, buying into this religious nonsense, still playing the political game by the rules that they've created, with their constitutions and bills of rights, and as long as they can keep us in that mode, they have less to fear, because they know that the thing that they want the least is a well-led, intelligent uprising. For them, it means complete annihilation. And they certainly don't want the kind of knowledge that we're talking about. And so as long as people like us, they keep them silent, keep them poor, keep them being considered nuts, crazies, that works. And never to forget that how important religion. Now, this has nothing to do with people's spiritual beliefs, what I'm talking about. That's a total different adventure, right? Philosophical understanding, psychological insight, spiritual, metaphysical leanings. This is all nothing wrong with that. But the average Christian's got to realize, for instance, that hidden behind these religious tenets, these religious concepts, is the call to immerse yourself. Even in the Bible it said, Christ lives in me, I live no longer. Well, who wrote that? Most of the Bible and everything that you could identify with Christianity was put into existence decades, even centuries after the death of Jesus, okay? So everything we know about a Christian church is Constantine and Theodosius and Charlemagne and the biggest psychopaths in this world. And then not to mention the Francis Bacons and the King James and so many other nutters we could talk about. This is what you're believing, and even more modern-day evangelists. So the average Christian isn't dealing with what Jesus said, not even your Protestants. There's nothing to do with what Jesus said. It's got to do with what the church says to do. Obedience, right? The tribe being important, the individual being nothing. So man is still drenched. One of the things I think I brought out in my work so strongly, the people who know my work, is the whole concept of historical amnesia. You were speaking about it during the break. Is that people don't even have the hard-wiring, and they're so disconnected from their past because their own mothers and fathers have done a terrible thing by not introducing them to those cultural aspects, especially in Western culture. And so now we have a historical amnesia. So that, which means in more simple language, if people don't know the problems, how on earth are they going to find the solutions? What they're going to do is find pseudo-solutions. They're going to find the solutions that PBS has told you to implement. Yeah. That Clive Burns or some liberal non-entity, or Michael Moore, for all the little good that they can do or perform. This is the kind of, you got worldwide chaos, and you're going to be trying to implement some of the nonsense. How are you going to, and all the while, shopping becomes the primal cultural activity. Not studying Shakespeare, shopping at the mall. And you know what today's neurotic world is? If the mall is open, ecstasy. If the mall is closed, call my therapist. I'm in a state of neurosis. Yeah. If the credit cards are maxed out, I melt down. Where's the suicide pills? All right? Doctor, help. Dial it, doc. I'm freaked out. I need Prozac. The mall was closed. I mean, we are dealing with a population now, you see, that is almost perfect for this New World Order to commence, and this communitarianism, as others have named it. But it's, as I've always mentioned in my work, it's a very, very ancient... in fact, look, even the neocons, come on, and not just them, but other people, in the highest brow people at the steering level of government are talking about an end to history, an end of history. And what they mean by that is that all the social models, right, whether it's democracy, whether it's technological advancement, whether it's economics, as far as they're concerned, it's all come to an end. Now, I've refuted that by saying, bullshit, the self of a man, right, his imperial self on a psychological level. That's the next place. That's where one needs to do the explorations. But they mean it in a slightly different way. They're talking about the end, like we talked, the post-humanism, isn't it? They're talking about a change, a fundamental new making of history. Because what they really mean when they say words like end of history is they mean end of man as we know it. Not history. How can history end? It's lunatic. But there's a cover terms. They come up with these talismans. They generate. Their PR people, their spin doctors, create endless. There's been so many down through the years, from the Thatcher era and before. My God, from the opening of America, the Constitution, we the slaves. Oh, I meant we the people. And we believe it. It's written slavery all over the goddamn thing. It's left doors so open. The Bill of Rights, the Magna Carta, we're talking about democracy now, The Magna Carta was like pulling teeth out of King John even to get the Magna Carta. To get the Bill of Rights, it was like pulling teeth. These were offered under the most stringent oppression from the people. The Constitution was even created behind closed doors, for goodness sake. These were concessions, and most of the people who signed it didn't want to concede. They said, what the hell? Why should we? We're going to rule you. You're not going to have any say. But when they realized they couldn't run a place as big as America, with the kind of rebellious people that they were dealing with, that they better concede. Your Bill of Rights is a concession. Your Magna Carta isn't no glowing document. These were concessions, and they had to be fought for with hundreds and hundreds of people fighting for hundreds of years. So when these neocons and other thinkers are talking about end of history on a political and social level, they know what they're talking about. They're going to make you into a perfect robot. Their democracies, you know how worthless that is? The conceivers of democracy said that it can only work in towns and villages of maybe about 10,000 people. They would have looked, that's right, read it. Go back. Aristotle, all of these people who created democracy said it was for small city-states. Never, ever, 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 anywhere was the concept we call democracy ever meant to be used in sizes of anything more than 10,000 people. It's null and void by its own definition. In Plato, people don't like this when you mention this, but in Plato's 4 or 5 states of government, democracy was at the bottom. Because they shuddered to think of what a mass of uninformed, ill-educated, domestically preoccupied, clueless, uncreative people, what would happen if you gave those people the vote? You know what you would have? You would have what's known as tyranny of the majority. So when people say, oh, America, we'll have to have democracy because otherwise we'd have tyranny. Haven't you ever heard of tyranny of the masses? Tyranny of the democracy? Tyranny of the mob? Most of the things that have been done in atrocities of the world has not been done by having other forms of government. It's through the democracies voting it in. And what I mean specifically, if you bring this down a notch, that tyranny is the tyranny against the free man, the free thought, right? The democracy, the mob rule. Who do you think suffers? Independence suffers. Individuality suffers. The will of the majority, the will of the vote, is the most oppressive force to true creativity. As Ayn Rand warned, it's against the movement of the truly industrious person. He is the one who stands to lose. He's the one who in the school, from school up, is collectivized and told that he is his brother's keeper and that his own merits mean nothing. The only reason why we accept this democratic rubbish is because of the heady language and the PBS and the newspapers and the heady language that's been given to it. Do you know who benefits from it? The evil oligarchs benefit for it, and the mass of undereducated, uncreative people benefit. And there's no talking around that because the proof is in the pudding. We've had it for hundreds of years, and the proof is right there for anybody to see. Democracy is not, in Latin they actually call it argumentum ad populum, right? Appeal to the people. But I say, to an ignorant people. And one of the underpinning, I know we have short time, so one can't get into this as deeply as one wants, but one of the most important, those who've taken classes in sociology and political science know this, that one of the underpinning philosophies under the modern democracy, in America they call it pragmatism, in England they call it utilitarianism, is this concept of the greatest good for the greatest number. And you and I were talking before, and I pointed out how utterly preposterous that term is. It's their own motto, and you don't need to bring any external refutation to bear. No other school, no other opponents need to apply. The simple statement itself, their own motto, the greatest good for the greatest number, shows you the bankruptcy of their ideals. Because how can you equate good with the greatest number? First of all, what is your definition of good? A child could tell you that good is only functional, only earns its stripes, only means something if it fights evil. The greatest good is that which demolishes the greatest evil. But since the other definition of the force that destroys evil is intelligence, then we see the preposterousness of that statement. Because the greatest number, right, the other part of the statement, isn't intelligent. Therefore cannot be good. Therefore the point is meaningless. So the very motto that they deemed, that they came up with to define their function in society, and by God, billions of dollars, some of the highest statesmen have bought into this. Margaret Thatcher was a pragmatist. Most of your American presidents are. They haven't even got the brains to realize that the statement itself, let alone the principle, is meaningless. The greatest good, the greatest number can never be equated with good, since good is not only the fighting of evil, but that implies intelligence, and the greatest number has never been intelligent. Quite the contrary, the greatest number has always been pig ignorant. So how dare they use the term good in a pure, true philosophical statement in this way? And therefore that's why we have a society today that is full of intelligent but completely ungood, meaning amoral or immoral people. Bill Clinton isn't immoral, he's amoral. So, immoral is the Republicans and amoral is the Democrats. What's the difference? People who don't even understand the concept, or those who do but commit bad deeds anyway? That's what you've got. What society needs is intelligent men who are good. And that's what we've never had. So the journey for the future is simply to have moral, and there's an easy way to test for this. Getting the intelligent men and women into real government, to be the chancellors and executives, and all, that's not difficult. In fact, one could argue some of the most intelligent men are in the think tanks, and they're running government now. Yeah, but the problem is they're not good. They're psychopaths. So then if you got the good men in, if you got the intelligent men in, as I'm talking about, how would you test for morality? That's easy. You just, after the 2 years, see if they're feathering their own nest, listening to what lobbyists are saying, and the very first moment they do it, the executive cancels their contract, and they're even arrested. And then if you do that within 1 or 2 years, you look at the people that you've hired, and Boatwright's even added something interesting. Lieutenant James Boatwright said, I wouldn't even hire young people to run government. Nobody in the Congress, nobody in any of these administrative or executive bodies would be under the age of 50. You have to have the elderly, the retired. He kind of meant it semi-humorously, but I think there's a lot of intelligence there. Obviously, you need some young people. You want to take it too far. But basically, his idea is that if you can balance a checkbook, if you've got some experience, if you can run a household, if you have some worldly experience, you see, and some chastening of life, well, that exists in our elderly people who are just thrown aside into nursing homes. Why aren't they able to run the system? They'd probably do it much, much better than the ambitious punk 20-something who's out for himself and can't wait till he's got 4 yachts and taking bribes from every single person. And as I said before, ancient Ireland, yeah, you had democracy. You had the Brehon Law. Norway, you had democracy. Venice, you had democracy. Athens, you had democracy. What's the common denominator? Tiny, tiny societies. You cannot even think about it. Having systems of democracy in anything larger than those I've mentioned. Secondly, the very moments, the triumphs of democracy are frauds. I've done so much work on to show the Constitution, drawing on the work of my mentors like Ralph Epperson and Eustace Mullins and so many others, to show you that not only the Magna Carta in England, but the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in America are largely frauds. You can stick them. If that's your democracy, you can stick them because they left the door wide open for the same oligarchs. Nowhere has it ever been written by any founding father. No founding father prohibited private power, the rise of private power, and of course the one we know is the worst, was the rising of the federal banks that had already destroyed Europe. Well, what's so good about these founding fathers? The men who warned those founding fathers, please don't do this, they were shunted aside. Nobody listened to them. To this day, government is an extension of corporation. Government makes the rules and the regulations that corporations can outdo government any day of the week. They make sure that fraudulent politicians, bribes, that U.S. taxpayer money, you see, is gone to support huge corporate ventures, which only undermines the political will of people. We have a corporate situation, So, as I said, some of the things that we don't have to reinvent. Maybe thinking about, do we want young punks paid hundreds and thousands of dollars with all the perks running in government? I mean, isn't that counterproductive? Maybe we should have a fixed sum of money and some elderly people in there, and then when they breach it, when they try to feather their own nests or do immoral acts, instantly they're penalized by jail. Maybe we should outlaw lobbying. You see, I haven't got time now to go into the whole list of the 15 things, Michael Tsarion's checklist of wonders, but they are there. They are absolutely exist. One doesn't have to talk about that. And here's another thing. Libertarianism. I'm not a 100% libertarian person, but I know that in the between gray area from where we are now, from right where you and I are talking now, until we get to the point where there's a real maturity, a real evolution in people, right, until they deeply understand some of the things I can barely go into because the human race is simply so remedial and infantile yet, they're not going to grasp these points. But then that's okay. I can meet you halfway. Libertarianism. Join the Libertarian Party. Read up on it. My forum, I've presented everything there. War on You page. I think it's around the 77th page, 77, 78. Click on that. Go in there. There's some fantastic studies there. Get on the encyclopedias online and look up libertarianism. Find out where the Libertarian Party is in your area and vote for them and get involved. There's a systems for the gray area. They're not to solve all to the total problem of civilization or the total malignancy in man, but they are fantastic when it comes to unplugging some of the most extreme breaches and the injustices, like the injustices of federal government, the injustices of the medical, the injustices of high prices, you see, and no work for people, and many other things I could mention. They're all listed there. I don't need to go into them. These are on the surface. Nobody needs a degree. Nobody needs to be a rocket scientist. You have alternatives ready-made. Mutualism. You've got so many wonderful political systems. And with them come credit-free systems and...
Well, there's the break coming up there, Michael, so let's continue on the other side. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few short minutes. You're listening to American Freedom Radio. And we're back, everybody. You're listening to American Freedom Radio. My name is David Whitehead. I'm standing in for Santos Bonacci, and we're here tonight with Michael Tsarion. And Michael, before the break, we were just getting into some of the different concepts of, and breaking down democracy and the illusions that are there, and a lot of these different systems that get put in to just for people to bite into, and then only to realize that again and again they continually fail. And one of the things that seems to be, talking about democracy and mob rule, is that if they have the finger on the pulse of everybody's brainwaves, and if they know basically people better than they know themselves, and nobody's better at that than, of course, the mainstream media. I mean, they have full-time psychologists on staff that are, giving them more insight into our way of thinking than we even have any idea about. And so they've got they've already got that influence there directly. It's in your face 24/7. And so, we're up against a very, very big machine that's been there. But I've seen, in just observing this, that since events like 9/11, there's been this, maybe it started slowly in the beginning, but more and more and more, and it just keeps getting exponentially bigger. We see people supporting alternative media now. And so maybe we can get into the media and its play in all of this.
Yes, and don't forget that the computer and the internet is a key part of even the solutions that I bring to bear. The different kind of contributions to, if there was a new setup in which even under a libertarian model there was still some voting and some monitoring of what people were doing. The internet is vital in that. But a lot of people who are listening probably don't even realize that even the three-party system that we're dealing with, it's basically a British oligarchical system, and it was created only about 200 years ago. Even in the 17th century, it was still barely underway. So this is a very recent thing, and that's why I can easily, people have this idea that it's all hoary and ancient and old and to be respected and revered. It's nothing. It's just an aberrant form that is bankrupt. It was almost bankrupt from the moment that it started. There are alternatives. But what has also happened is not only the talismanic accolading and promotion of democracy, this incredible holy word, but they always know to counterpoint it. You're talking about their guile. Yeah, they're guileful. So let's create a thing called fascism and neo-Nazism and authoritarianism and totalitarianism and communism on the other side, so that the TV home Johnny Sixpack is going to sit there going, well, I'm into democracy because look at the monsters on the other side. And so they create a faux image of what looks like its alternative. I heavily fund that with a bunch of psychopaths like Hitler, Mussolini, and whoever else you could mention. And then you think, well, I have to have this, because if I don't, then I'm obviously going for that. All those people who think this way don't even look up on the encyclopedia. What is fascism? What does that word actually mean? What does totalitarianism actually mean? So the first thing to realize is that, look, this British system is incredibly recent. It has no reason for our respect and bowing and scraping. Second, as I've always mentioned, it's pure oligarchy, because even in the Houses of Parliament, which is meant to represent the common people, there's the Queen's mace, and the Queen opens Parliament. End of story as far as I'm concerned. Smell a conspiracy? You better start doing so. Next, the whole concept of people power, as we said earlier on, is nonsense. The people who say that they're representing the people when they go to government, Congress, and whatever, they don't. They represent themselves and the lobbyists out in the corridor. The whole concept of people believing that these people, these representatives, actually worked for their needs should have gone out 200 years ago. It's so dead. I don't know what you can imagine. These Ron Pauls and these Ross Perot's and these Ralph Naders and anyone else you can mention, let alone the bigger fish, the Obamas, they do not represent EU. They represent themselves. That's the end of the line. They do not represent anybody. Because if they did, they'd be screaming to get rid of the Federal Reserve, the IRS, to stop the unlimited immigration, to penalize the criminals in government, to, like I say, downsize Congress. They'd be doing all of these things. You see them barely doing any of this. You see them talking about largely non-issues, still very interested in what's happening in other countries. Who told America, originally America for hundreds of years during its first incarnation, didn't involve itself in foreign wars to any degree? Had a complete campaign of non-interference while it worked itself out, you see? And then that was a good model to go on, because if America's had gained incredible amount of self-sufficiency, that in itself would have provided a model for everyone else. You wouldn't have needed to go in and do anything. The very model. But see, other forces, the Lord Shelbournes, the British establishment, knew that the rise of America means the rise of Germany, the rise of Russia. They don't want that. So they fomented wars. I talk about on my Germanophobia website.com. I have the whole story there of how Germany was undercut by these British oligarchs. So the whole concept, as I said, the greatest good for the greatest number, these utilitarian and pragmatic philosophical underpinnings of democracy are fallacious, utterly fraudulent, bankrupt. In fact, let's even go deeper. The whole understanding of equality amongst people. This is another bedrock, another talismanic mind control fallacy that most people believe all over the world, be they conservative or Democrat. Equality, everyone's equal. No, they are not equal. The person who comes into your life and destroys your life through evil acts or ruins your business, right, or who in some other way causes malignance in your life is not your equal. People are not equal morally, and they're not equal in terms of intelligence and rationality. No way. And it's the moral superiority that matters, not racial superiority or lack of it. It's moral superiority and moral inferiority. And believe me, men are not moral. So the very idea of setting up a system of government that's based on the equality of all men is itself immoral in a deep, deep way. Because what this does is it holds down and puts the morally superior and the rationally superior man, who's a totally different entity, by the way, it drags him down to the level of the savage that he has to sit beside in school and deal with, and the teachers, penalizing that person for their genius in ways that so many people have pointed out. It's a form of treachery, as we said. People know the term mob rule. My God, do they really know how desperately evil that is? As I said, the tyranny of the masses, which is what your democracy is, and that the oligarchs of our world had to sit down and think incredibly hard. Okay, you can't beat these Yanks in battle. Do you give up? Most Americans say, oh, well, they just gave up and buggered off back to Britain. No, they did not. You do not spend billions of dollars bringing troops from Germany to try and fight a war and then back off. They got 101 more strategies to take you down. And they do it in an incredible way. They do it in many, many ways, not just through the instigation of federal orgs, but in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, in the Declaration of Independence, all of these parchments that people to this day think are serving them, when in fact any fool can see. Just look at your check to see how much money's taken out of it in taxation. Just look around you at the dilapidation of your cities. Just look at the arrogance of semi-savage people coming to your shores and then telling you what you're going to do, and all the rest of the aberrance. This unbelievable, obvious stuff we're talking about here. And yeah, as I say, repeat again, on the good side, we don't have to invent the wheel. The ancient Irish had the oldest system of laws in the world, Brehon law. You want to replace the sick version of law, and people go, Michael, it's desperate. What can we do to get out of this whole... Well, what you can do is just go back to what you had before. There's whole systems of law to replace your maritime law and this idiotic forms of law. Corporate law basically is what you've got. But you see, another one of my critiques, if I could just add this, I always need to add this on a personal note. When you look at this thing very deeply and philosophically, one really has to say, because remember, the solutions of the future, the far future, we said this would be in 3 parts. So a little anecdote about the far future, beyond libertarianism, the things that really go to the heart of solving things. How we know that libertarianism and democracy don't work is by looking at nature, looking at the measure of our failing. And the measure of our failing is still the immense biological, biotic holocaust that we engage in on a daily basis in regards to nature and the animals. This is the measure of who man thinks he is. This is the measure of man as he is, not as he thinks he is. As he lives in the cities and sits in his little cubicles and drives home to work and turns on his favorite radio show and sits in his car, you see, and goes down to the mall. This is an image of who you think you are. But nature has a totally different understanding of what you are. Right? And the obscene way that we have treated nature, the ecocide, the ecological disasters, those are directly related to the way our social organizations and social ideas are put into our heads from school onwards. Now, ecologists run around accusing capitalism. Well, yeah, that's partly right, but that's not the solution. Can't just go around using that. And as Alex Jones and others have rightly mentioned, there's also something sinister going on there with some of these ecological movements, these green movements, which are loaded with Fabians and communists. We know that. But that doesn't mean that you then still do what you're doing to nature. There's a legitimate ecological conscience. And we don't have that anymore. Tribal people have that. And that's what I was talking about. In the future, if we had a new model, you know, as I say, beyond libertarianism, it would involve a certain amount of going back to the way ancestors did it. Not in a regressive way, like, hey man, let's all go back to the, you know, sitting under a mushroom out there. No, I don't mean it in some hippy-dippy way. I mean in a very proactive, ecologically sound way. Right? And a truly biodiverse, proper, educated, intelligent way. Man, that incorporates the science that we have, but also incorporates a dipping back into the past. That would be, in one sense, you can use the word in quotation marks, as sort of some of the tribal native understandings, right? But the measure of our failing, the measure of the systems that we have, to know, for anyone listening to the sound of my voice, to know that they're aberrant, to know that they're malignant, it is in this relationship of man to nature. Man is not any more civilized in his nature, in his relationship to nature. Man is not any more civilized in his conscience, in his freaking shame. The shame. I took my kids down to the piggy park today. We loved looking at the spring lambs. Hey, honey, where's my sausages and chops? You think that making a graveyard out of your stomach and a sewer out of your bloodstream, you're going to be sane enough to go out and counsel? Man is a man-centered world, but he lives in a universe in which man is only the tiniest part of this world. Through your scientists and your religious types, we live in a man-centered world. We're only man's language and man's thinking and man's needs. What an obscenity in that alone. Here we live in a universe in which we're barely a speck. And yet do we know the language of the light? Do we know the language of the oceans? Do we have respect for the stars or anything around us? The elements? Are they not brothers and sisters also? Are we going to learn like our ancient forefathers did, be they Druids or Native American Indians or thousands of tribes that have been wiped off the planet because we knew better? Those tribes were in harmony with nature. They watched meticulously how the locusts and the animals and the butterflies, you see, and they watched how animals made their homes, and they lived in close proximity to the natural elements, knowing that nature is your teacher, and if you don't learn from her, you'll learn from misguided men, and in the end you'll fall under the most misguided of all men, which is exactly what's happened. So I don't want to hear talk of any democracies and three-party systems and constitutions. You don't need any of that stuff. The man who's in harmony with nature, he's free of karma. He make error. He's going to make severe errors. He's going to make lots of mistakes. But he'll learn quickly from those mistakes. He won't be like we are today in a politically correct puppy ear world where we're not going to allow you to learn from your mistakes. We're going to slow everything down. We're not going to have you say anything, do anything, or think anything until we give you permission. Is that all right with you? Oh, yes, it's perfectly okay with me. Yeah, it's a real pain for me to be a self. And can you also do something about keeping all that nature away? I want more homogenized and processed food. Right? We got the McDonald's looking like churches, cathedrals. Those are our modern places of worship.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm talking about? The mania of it. And essentially, 25 species of flora and fauna wiped off the face forever. Every day. Every day. 25 species of flora and fauna. 10,000 species a year. People know this. I'm not telling them anything new. We've heard this whole story. We can look it up. The ecocide, I've made it apparent in my work on the forum I've got there on some of the links. Loads of information about this. The despoilation of the earth. The despoilation of the earth, as I pointed out in the final section of posthumanism, is the despoilation of oneself. Because one's whole archetypal matrix, one's whole subconscious matrix is the nature. It's been programmed by nature. Only the tiny bit you call ego is of your daily existence when you were born, and this life has been programmed and you function. But with that comes a lot of aberrance. The ego is a very good thing, but in it also comes a lot of aberrance. In your conformities to consensus, in your, falling for these democratic models and other nonsense that obviously if you follow it through, and it looks all good in the town square, but if you follow it, follow the checks, you find out, oh my God, these Nikes and these people and all this evil is there, and I'm subscribing to it, and not to mention what it does to my world, my nature. These are holocausts that we cannot be signing on for. And we have a whole world of experience, a whole world of education. Our children do anyway. Through animals and, being exposed to all of that they're not being exposed to. They're being exposed to junk food and iPhones. We have sealed the world in the dome. This is the posthumanism that's also a great worry. And so good men, truly good moral men, need to understand their true place in the universe, you see. And they need to... It's okay to be pointing fingers at capitalism, pointing fingers at the so-called enemy, while you yourself are still running out there exploiting nature and avoiding your moral duty. The utilitarian, even the utilitarian philosopher Peter Singer fundamentally proved back in the 1960s and 70s, proved beyond all shadow of a doubt that animals should be considered persons, and therefore to kill them for food or any other experimentation or any other reason is a moral felony. And it's non-negotiable. He proved it. Nobody's ever been able to refute it. No thinker in the world has been able to refute his thesis. The book's by Peter Singer, the Australian philosopher, proving absolutely that animals not only have rights, but they are persons.
Wow, absolutely, Michael. That was very well said. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And we do have a break coming up here, folks, so don't go anywhere. We're having a fascinating discussion with Michael Tsarion here, so we'll be back in a few short minutes. You're listening to American Freedom Radio. And welcome back, everybody. You're listening to American Freedom Radio, and my name is David Whitehead, standing in for Santos Bonacci. We're here with my guest tonight, Michael Tsarion, and we're heading into the final segment here, Michael, so maybe we can get into some of the other points you wanted to cover, and then we can talk about some of the upcoming events you have going on.
That would be great, yeah. Yeah, if we project our vision into the future, it can sometimes be wrong to do that, but there's times when it's a very valid thing to do. As I said, I hope people, and I deeply mean it, check out the mutualism, the libertarianism models. I think they work on a local level. Remember, as I said, on the biggest philosophical level, they do not solve man's deeper existential issues, but that is a separate subject, see. We need a totally different kind of government that might be somewhat native and tribal, but at the same time very modern. But it might not be a democratic model, and therefore we're in a situation right now where that is not applicable to people. So in the gray area in the meantime, and certainly in order to remedy some of the grosser injustices of the world we have been living in, because as you've been talking about, and we've been talking about, we are up to speed now. There are a lot of people who know that all the models, all the socio-political models are bankrupt. Be they in an American context, some people are still saluting the flag and saluting the Constitution, but less and less of the people are buying into this. But then, unfortunately, what happens is they say, well, in fact, there was a Clint Eastwood movie, Dirty Harry, he says, I hate the goddamn system, but until somebody comes along with something better, I'll, have to keep working with it. Yes, but the point that we're trying to offer now is that there is something better to come along. And therefore, the healthy man, he knows that doesn't rule out the possibility of making mistakes, but at the same time, he's open enough to giving it a try. So, as I said, in the interim period, people need to study how you can win against government injustice and local injustice. And you know what libertarian models also do? Is they give you the confidence that you're lacking. Right? When you see these little injustices being cleaned up and cleared up, and these tyrants being, sort of scaled back, that gives the ordinary man on the street a very needed dose of true political power. And I know that he won't misuse it. And also what it does is leading on from that, it gives man the interest now. You see, one of the biggest things is not only the historical amnesia, but the disenchantment and the lack of interest in politics. And no wonder, because that's Big Brother's plan, is to have so many factions and so much failure on both sides, and so much meaningless argy-bargy where so much energy is expended but no results are shown in society, that man then tunes out and turns off. But if the libertarian model is very healthy on one level, for me, I think one of its inherent benefits is it does give you so many pluses. It allows so many injustices to be scrolled back that it then gives the ordinary person a sense of not only belonging and a sense of motivation, but then he upgrades his intelligence, and then in 15, 20 years, you may now move to a position where when people like myself come along with a different kind of model, you might now be up to, accepting it. Where people are right now in this knee-jerk reaction, that the moment that you present anything that's against, democracy or liberalism, they resent it. They can't listen to objectivism. They can't listen to even the barely, as I said, very few people are even voting into libertarianism. So people like me know to say, shut up, don't talk about anything else, because they're just not ready for it. But that doesn't mean that a time won't come. During that time, we need to continue looking at how we've been mind-controlled by science in our vision of our bodies, visions of the universe, visions of the world, man standing outside it, as we explained earlier, man thinking it's just to be manipulated, a bunch of blocks, inanimate things, looking at the manipulation of religion, that man, yeah, you're in the world, but you're in the world as a sinner, and the world is a very dark and foreboding place that basically you want to shut out. You see, we need to examine all of this, all these attempts to dehumanize us. Once you understand these contaminatory machinations, that helps enormously for us to find out what's been going on. In more simple language, once you know the problem, it's at that point then you can apply the right solution and you can move into that area. But down the line, in the far future, I would say that probably what is needed is some sort of again, like Hegel, one of my favorite philosophers, spoke about, he was in favor of constitutional monarchy, and he tried to use the Prussian state as an example, and many of the points that he made are very legitimate. And that is, look, you can have a monarch. There's nothing inherently wrong with monarchy. In fact, there's nothing inherently wrong with imperialism. This is the strange thing. The problem is, if the hand that rules it is malignant, psychopathic, barking mad, evil, then you've got a problem. But there's nothing inherently wrong with monarchy, even if it's constitutional, which means that's voted in by people, or it's absolute, in which it's not. A small group of intelligent people vote that monarch in. First of all, that monarch is not bloodline. So to make things very simple and concrete, the danger, the trouble with the concepts of monarchy that we've had has been that they're false monarchies. They're run by psychopaths. They're not voted in by the person, the people, and they have royal bloodline. I mean that they have they affiliate with an oligarchy far, different than the people that they meant to be serving. Like I've always said, the British government do not serve Britain. The Belgian government and royal families do not serve Britain. The Habsburgs in Germany are not German. They just happen to live there. These are people who have a universal agenda, which we now have woken up to discover is in fact the case. How could you configure the EC or any of the stuff if this wasn't the case? So, but if you strip all of this malignance away, then you find something actually quite interesting. And that is that imperialism, right? Colonialization and even monarchy in a pure, non-malignant, that means benign state, is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, we know that I'm not a fool. I know that needs to be unpacked and explained properly. But just bear that in mind, that there is a benign version that has been never known in the world because you've not been taught about it. Nobody wants to teach you about it. And every version of autocracy, from Genghis Khan, who nearly wanted to wipe out the whole of Europe to graze his frickin' sheep, to the Japanese and the treatment of women and the incredibly hierarchical, tyrannous situation that ran over there or in China, or the versions of it that you have in Africa. You see, this monarchy is all over the world. The malignant version you find everywhere. And we've had that so wall to wall that every time that's been presented, then it's easy for the leftists to come in and say, see, it's capitalism is the problem, it's monarchy is the problem, and we've bought that. So to snap out of that mind control and to realize that even the British system of government is a very recent thing, and then to have the bravery to go over and study people whose books are absolutely taboo in our society today, That's where man needs to go. I already know I'm talking to the air. It's not going to happen. So that's why I go for the libertarian model in the meantime. Never to be doubting that is merely a placeholder. Because man needs to sit down and really discover how the evils that have come into existence have occurred, both environmentally, politically, and psychologically. He's got to understand these things, and he's very far away from being able to do it. So in the meantime, he needs something that's a placeholder, something that strips back some of the worst possible aberrations. And if you step into something like I'm describing as a certain constitutional monarchy where you hire an intelligent and good man just to be a figurehead, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, and I'll tell you why. As much as I've resisted it, down through my years of professional work, I've realized that the infantile masses really do need a leader. It's horrible to say, but you know something? We need the father figure. I don't, but people do. This is the fact. People like a leader, and for thousands upon thousands of years, they had one. The big daddy who just told you everything what to do. And so still, even in modern man, he doesn't feel 100% until he's got some god to worship, some figurehead. You know something? So give him one. A small evil to create a very big good. You have this Johnny. He's intelligent, he's moral, he's a philosopher type, just in the way that Plato described. And he doesn't really do anything, but he's a figurehead for all the people to look up to. And then he, or the people themselves, the intelligent ones, the morally good ones, continue to create a government in which is full of the chancellors and executives, and it's run by intelligence. And as I said, you can check for the moral component later on. It's not really the opposite of what we have now, but it runs along some of the similar lines. So what I'm saying is that people don't need to think in radical terms and think hopelessly. And you certainly don't need to think in terms of the globalists telling you what they're offering you, which is communitarianism, which is nothing but tyranny of the masses leading to the real malignant form in which the master is you. Right? The whole thing turns around and suddenly there's no external master. You've embodied the slave mentality, and which I've talked about time and time again, right? The identification with the object of your hate. You become your own panopticon. This is where we're moving to, and many have warned about it. The governmentality, right? The adultism, the total institution, and finally the complete colonization of your mind by the surveillance society, the Orwellian state, in which you conform willfully. That's the malignant aspect. As I said, as a subset to that, there could be an end of history and a terrible psychedelic predicted by many. I don't take that trivially. But given the fact that we remain sane, given the fact that intelligent people still exist and can sit around and realize, can we dip in? Can we sit down at a place and go through all the literature of the past and bring out from the Sun Tzus and the Lao Tzus and whoever it might be? Can we pool together all of the things that look like good ideas of government and then take the modern ideas from modern geniuses and universities and clever people, the really good moral, minds who exist today, and believe me, they do exist, and try to fuse the old world and the young world and forget your constitutions and all this other bullshit, because we know that that's been created by the golden ones above who were desperately needing an answer to how they're going to, herd, especially in an American context, because it looked like man might free himself at this point. Because what I mean is free himself commercially, and if you free yourself financially and commercially, then you free yourself intellectually. And that's what they were worrying about with the American experiment. They tried to bring in the troops, that didn't work, so they had to find other ways to dumb down the population, and they bloody well succeeded. But it can be turned around. It absolutely can be turned around.
Well, that's great, Michael, and we definitely want to talk and hear more about these different topics. And people that are listening, you definitely need to check out the MSR Conspiratorium. It's on Wednesday, May 29th. We're going to get into these subjects and more. We're going to answer your questions, so go and visit us on Facebook, MSR Conspiratorium, and we'll be checking you out there. So, Michael, I just want to thank you once again for your time and for taking this call with me tonight.
Oh, you're most welcome, David. Thanks. Let's do it again. And again, everyone welcome to come and visit.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.